It's been 10,000 hours and 10,000 more. Oh, if that's what it takes to learn it, sweetheart.
Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone. We will be starting shortly at 8:30 on the dot. Those who are already here live listening to us, just wait for a bit. We have all our speakers here. We're all excited to, well, be at this webinar and share all the new knowledge, hopefully, to all of you. So just stay tuned. Just wait for a bit, all right? Hope you have eaten your breakfast. You can grab your cup of coffee, tea, breakfast while listening, and also do participate in the chat. Or you can go to the stylo later. Our co-host will also mention that. So yeah, soon 8:30. All right, it's 8:30. So I'll pass the time now to Ravi. Mr. Ravi, you're muted.
Very warm welcome to all. Good morning. Okay, this is a webinar series. It's a collaborative event by Institute Pendidikan Guru Campus Batu Lintang and UNIMAS Gamification Center. Right. Okay, for this webinar, we'll be using the Slido to manage our question and answers session. And to get to the Slido, go to your browser and type Slido, and when you see joining as participant, just type the code, okay, 302394 as shown on your slide, okay. And if your question is specific to a speaker, please mention their names. Questions for the Q&A discussions will be at the end of all speakers have presented. Okay. For today, we will have 4 speakers, renowned speakers. The first one will be Dr. SIAW with the title of STEM for Assignment Using Tingling, and followed by Dr. HAMINAH SUHAIBO, STEM in Teaching and Learning History Subjects, and followed by Dr. LEONARD Lim, STEM Bucket, Spark Your Creativity Using Frugal Items, and CHUAH Man on the gamification in STEM subjects, myths and realities. Yeah. Okay, and followed by closing remarks by Dr. J.C. Lin Mino. Yeah. All right. For the first assignment, okay, Dr. HIONG, she will present assignment using tingling. Yeah. And Dr. HIONG is a lecturer who teaches courses related to education technology and digital innovation at Institute Pendidikan Guru Campus Batu Lintang. Her research interests covers online learning, mobile learning, and computational thinking. She is currently the head of unit for digital learning. A little bit of the synopsis of title. Engineering is not a subject taught in either the primary or secondary schools in Malaysia. Neither it is offered in IPG. Then how could engineering come into the picture of STEM when it is not officially taught as a subject in Malaysian classrooms? The answers will be shared in this session. We will discuss how engineering could easily be integrated into classroom learning. It is a matter of how teachers, lecturers apply engineering skills in their teaching or assessment strategies. Without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Xiao to with a presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ravi, for the introduction. So allow me to share my screen first. All right, hopefully you can see my PowerPoint slides. Is it on your screen?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. Okay, right. So I should start my sharing this morning. So as the title goes, STEM for assignment using ThinkLink. So for a start, I will share a bit on the background information regarding my webinar this morning. All right, and then with that, I follow on to the description on what this engineering design process is, and then how it is related to the assignment that I will share through this webinar, and a little bit on the sharing on this ThinkLink application used to create the assignment, followed by the example created by the student. All right. So actually, I teach this course, EduP 2112, that is Technology and Media and Education, which is a 2 credits course in the institute. And then it comes with assignment, whereby the student has to actually create an interactive multimedia package for teaching and learning, right? So this is the assignment. And there is a model, instructional design model, that the students will refer to in the process of creating the multimedia package. All right, so this is actually the ADDIE, or we call it the AD model. All right, so some of you might be new to this model, so I will share a bit on this model, what it is about. So AD model is actually an instructional design model developed by the Educational Technology Center of the Florida State University. Okay, and it is used by the educators and instructional designer to design and develop teaching learning materials, either for training or for teaching learning purposes. So this model has 5 steps as shown in this diagram here. And the ADDIE actually is the acronym for the 5 steps here: analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Right, so I will briefly go through what each step is about. So for the analysis stage, so the project team, actually, they have to brainstorms for ideas for the project that they want to develop for the problems that they identify actually. So they have to set the goals and including identify who are the target groups, and then they identify the available resources and the limitations to the project. And of course, they have to come up with possible solutions. They have to do some kind of research to collect all those information. Okay, so that is for the analysis stage. Now, next is the design, meaning that the project team, after collecting all the information, they have to determine what kind of medias they need to use to create for their project. All right, so since this is for instructional purposes, so they have to identify the pedagogical content, the approaches that they want to use. And with that, they come up with a plan, all right, for the project. Okay, so the development stage is to put the plan into action, that is developing the prototype. Right. So with the prototype coming out, the implementation stage will be testing the prototype to evaluate whether the design that have been planned earlier is actually meeting the needs of the project, right? And then they collect actually users' feedbacks will be collected at this stage to make the further modification or improvement on the design. And evaluation stage will be the final testing of the project, the overall project, right? To check whether the project actually meets the goals that have been set out earlier during the analysis stage. And these 5 steps processes can actually be repeated, right? Can be repeated to further improve the project in every cycle of the model, right? It can be repeated, iterated, right? So that is a bit about the AD model. Now I will relate it how my students use this model for the multimedia creation, the activities they carry out for each of the steps here. So under the analysis step, first of all, they have to identify what kind of teaching learning problems they want to solve, right? And then, of course, they have to set the goals to achieve through the project, the constraints, the resources available, as I described earlier. And then they have to do research, right, to collect information on the resources and ideas, and they list out the possible solutions for the project. So for the design part, my student, they have to actually document their planning through the graphic organizer. So they have to prepare a graphic organizer as the documentation for the plan for the project, right? So based on the plan, the student will develop the prototype. The application they use is ThinkLink, all right, an online application they use to ThinkLink to create the prototype based on the design they have planned earlier. And then the implementation is the testing part, right, the test run, right, and then to try to improve on it. And finally is the overall testing, final testing of the project. So these are the 5 steps my students refer to during the creation of the multimedia project. Right. You might be asking at this stage why I talk about this AD model. All right, why I talk about this model and how is it related to this STEM, all right, the things that we want to discuss this morning. All right, so I will share with you this article, which I read. It is from Mers and Mustafa in the year 2020. So this is their research article. They review on the engineering design process being used. And AD model is actually considered as one of the common engineering design process being used for instructional design purposes, right? With reference to this article. So with that, I can see that I can relate this AD model to the engineering design process, meaning that AD is actually parallel to this engineering design process. So if you look at the STEM component, it can be actually the E, so the engineering component of the STEM, right? And then since technology, the tingling is used to create the application, so this tingling will be the technology part of the component. So for doing the assignment, these 2 components of the STEM come into the picture, right? The technology and the engineering component. Okay, so I will discuss further. All right, this diagram before that. This diagram illustrates the model that my students refer to during the creation of the project, and then it is actually part of this engineering design process. Okay, as I described just now, based on the literature review that I read. Okay, now I describe a bit on what this engineering design process is, right? You can see that the steps I described later on, it's a bit similar to the model ADI. Some of the steps is a bit similar, right? I can actually, the steps can actually map to the AD model, it can actually map to this engineering design process. So first of all, asking at the ask steps. Before that, this engineering design process is actually used by the engineers to help them to solve problem, right? The steps, and these steps can be repeated just like the AD model. Okay, the first steps asked is actually identifying the problems, target solutions. You can see that this is actually quite similar to the analysis steps of the AD model, right? Okay, and then the research part is they will study the current state of the art, all right, then the technologies needed, and followed by the brainstorming for more ideas, possible solutions. So these first 3 steps is very similar to the analysis step of the AD model. Right, with that come the planning. All right, so the project team will select the best solutions, right, and then they make the plan for the project. And of course, they put the plan into action. They build the prototype, and then follow up by testing and evaluate. So the prototype means to find out what works and what doesn't work and what needs to be improved on. So, and then finally, the redesign comes in to further improve the prototype. So these steps, as I mentioned earlier, can be repeated to keep on improving the product produced. All right, so this is the engineering design process. Okay, now I try to map my students' activities to this model here. Okay, so this one, my students identify the teaching learning problem that I described earlier, can map here, map into this ask step. And then the research for information map into the research step. The list of possible solution is the imaging, the plan, there's the graphic organizer, the map to the plan, the create mapping to the prototype created using ThinkLink, and testing is the test run and the final testing. So you can see that what my students did can actually be mapped to this engineering design model here. Okay, so now I conceptualize what I discussed just now in this diagram. All right, I conceptualize it here like this. So since the assignment is actually a type of assessment, so for generally assessment can actually be integrated with this STEM component, even though it might be non-science or non-math subject, whereby we only use the engineering design process component and the technology component to help to create the prototype probably. So in the process of doing all this, the students actually solving problems, right? And then they have to make decisions. With that come the critical thinking skills and the creativity come in, all that come in. So this is what we actually want to, how to say, prepare our students for the 21st century workforce, right? And then with this integration of the STEM component, hopefully the students will acquire the skills that we want them to acquire, right? And the STEM conceptual diagram can be actually used for teaching, all right? I mean, planning STEM activities for the classroom, right? It might not be science or math subject, but we still can prepare STEM activities by incorporating the engineering design component and the technology component into it, right? For the students to create some kind of product, right? So with that coming as I mentioned earlier, the problem solving, the decision making, the critical thinking, and the creativity all come in here. So this is what I can conclude from what I discussed just now with this conceptual diagram here. Okay, actually there are website, right? And then I found this website. There are examples given on how to solve everyday problems using the engineering design cycle. Let me share with you the web page for Rana. Okay. All right, this is the web page. Okay, as you scroll down, you can see examples being given and the grade level, all that, the very detailed information, even coming with sample activities on how this engineering design process has been integrated in the classroom to enable the students to do a project. Of course, the examples given here is meant for science and maths, but I believe that these ideas can be accommodated for other subjects which might be not science or maths, right? So these are the examples given here. So if you are interested, you can actually go to this Teach Engineering website, and there are a lot of resources there about the teaching using engineering design process. All right, so I go back to my slide here. Okay, so so much about the engineering design process. So now I will move on to the next part of my sharing, which will be the application that my students use to create their multimedia ThinkLink. All right, this is the main page of the ThinkLink with the bird there, right? And actually, there is a free version for teachers to use. All right, and then teacher can just sign up and log in and use the website to create interactive virtual learning resources for students to interact with. So how this application works is that you can tag, right, by tagging either pictures or videos or 360 pictures or videos with this icon. I will show you how it works here through the website. Okay, not this one. Right. So this is the website. Once you log in, I have the account. This, right, and you can actually see there on the top right hand corner, there is the create button for you to create new project. Before that, you have to upload pictures of that. Okay, so I have some pictures that I have uploaded, so I will show how the tagging is done first, right? With reference to this picture I uploaded. So you just double click the picture that you have uploaded. So this application is actually quite useful for those who are interested to create interactive online resources for students, especially during this pandemic on time period, right? So this is about the water life cycle. I mean, water cycle, if for those teachers teaching about water cycle. So you can upload the image about this water cycle, and then this image has no information yet, right? So what you need to do is you have to go to the editing mode, right? Go to the editing mode to take the spot that you want students to have information for further reading. So this on the left hand side, you can see the adding the text, right? Just click, and then you can add text or media, right? And then you have icons. You can choose what kind of icon you want, and you can change the color actually. Let's say I want to have information, right? So I choose this icon, and I want the green color. Okay, and then you can actually hyperlink to the website. If it's online resources, we can hyperlink to websites and also upload images. So here I'm just demonstrating, so I don't have the website. I did not upload the website, right? In the link here. Okay, once it is done, the icon should be there. Wait, it's not showing. Let me try again. Okay, this one, which I have chosen. Okay, right. So I have to click done. Right, it should appear here, but somehow I can't see the text. Right, it should appear. Okay, then like I said just now, the text can be linked to information. Okay, and then you can keep on adding whatever information you want by choosing the text here. Right, you can embed website actually. All right. Okay. So very brief about this application, how it works. So now I will go back to my screen to the ThinkLink website. All right, I will just demo one very simple project that I did, okay, to teach about the digestive system. I use a video as the background, right? I play the video, okay, and then in here I have tagged to information, so I have to wait until the video finish playing. Then you can see the hotspots that I have added in here. So these are some of the tagging that I did, right? So since this is about digestive system, so one of the tag I linked to the graphic images about digestive system, where the students can actually refer to the diagram, and then some on YouTube resources for the student to watch. Okay, and then I have a YouTube that linked to the different parts of the body on the different type of digestion taking place in the body system. Okay, so this is the example that I did for this simple tingling project. All right, now I share what my student did. Okay, my students, their major is teaching the Islamic religion subject. So they use this application to create the multimedia project. So this is one sample from my students. Okay. Right. Okay, she has, sorry. So she linked to resources like I did just now. So some are YouTube, and she has online interactive activities for the students to do. Right, she used word war to create a few activities to the subject that she created using this thing link. The topic, right? So she created interactive activities for the student to participate, test their understanding on what they have browsed through for the online resources. All right, just key in the name. Okay, then the student can start doing the quiz. So this is an example of the interactive activity the student created for the student to take part. It's a bit of a gamification in there, game-based. All right. So I will not go through the activities. All right. So I go back to my. I'll go back to my slide. Okay, so that is so much about tingling and the prototype from my students. So I think with that, I end my sharing here, very short sharing about how STEM comes into the picture for the assignment that my student did, even though it is a non-maths or non-science subject. With that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. SIAW, for the wonderful presentation. Yeah. So for those who have questionnaires, yeah, they can post it as well as what we have requested earlier on in the Slido, right? And by end of the seminar, before the closing, then you can answer the questions. Okay. So we will continue with the next presenter, yeah, our next speaker. So thank you, Dr. Xiao. So we would like to invite Dr. Hajah HAMINAH SUHAIBO, the next speaker. All right, Dr. Hajah HAMINAH SUHAIBO, okay, merupakan seorang pensyarah kanan ya dalam bidang pendidikan sejarah, ya. Beliau banyak terlibat ya dalam penggubalan kurikulum sejarah di peringkat kementerian dan juga di peringkat kementerian dan IPGM serta membina modul-modul berhubung pendidikan sejarah. Beliau juga telah menghasilkan beberapa buah buku ya dan membuat pembentangan di seminar dalam dan luar negara berkaitan pendidikan sejarah ya. Baik, sinopsis dia. Banyak kajian menunjukkan ya pelajar kurang berminat dengan pendidikan sejarah ya. Pelajar tidak dapat melihat fakta sejarah dengan jelas kerana dikatakan belajar perkara lama yang mereka tak pernah lalui ya, atau mampu digapai melalui imajinasi ya. Dan guru perlu kreatif ya agar proses pengajaran dan pembelajaran dapat menarik minat murid lebih-lebih lagi semasa PDPR dijalankan ya. Aplikasi sains dan teknologi perlu cuba digabungkan dengan mata pelajaran sejarah agar kefahaman dan penghayatan pelajar tentang ilmu sejarah dapat ditingkatkan. Ya. So tanpa membuang masa, saya ingin menjemput Dr. Hajah Haminah SUHAIBO untuk memulakan pembentangan beliau. Ya.
Baik, okey. Terima kasih Encik Ravi. Terima kasih Encik Ravi dan rakan-rakan semua. Baik, hari ini saya akan berkongsi perkongsian aplikasi dalam STEM dalam pengajaran dan pembelajaran sejarah. Baik, apa yang saya buat hari ini ialah saya akan bersama dengan seorang pelajar saya, iaitu Muhammad Atif bin Jeffrey, bagaimana kami cuba melihat PDP sejarah ini yang dikatakan sebagai mata pelajaran yang kurang diminati ini, kita cuba tarik minat pelajar untuk belajar dengan untuk mengikuti pembelajaran sejarah. Jadi ini merupakan hanya satu perkongsian usaha-usaha yang kami buat untuk menarik minat pelajar dalam mata pelajaran sejarah. Jadi pertama kali saya mohon maaflah, saya akan menggunakan bahasa Melayu, bahasa Malaysia, memandangkan apa yang kami buat adalah untuk pelajar-pelajar yang belajar di sekolah rendah. Okey, perkongsian ini lebih pada guru-guru bagaimana kita nak kongsi. Okey, kita applykan STEM ini dalam mata pelajaran sejarah. Baik, saya akan mulakan sedikit, di peringkat awal saya akan beri sedikit penerangan dan kemudian akan diteruskan oleh guru pelatih saya, pelajar saya, Muhammad Atif bin Jeffrey, yang mana beliau telah menunjukkan ini, mengaplikasikannya semasa pengajaran dan pembelajaran dalam talian. Yang baru-baru ini, di mana beliau menjalani praktikum, dan PDP dijalankan secara dalam talian. Okey, saya teruskan. Baik. Ini telah ramai orang buat kajian telah macam mana PDP itu kurang, mata pelajaran sejarah ni kurang, dapat saya ambil 2 je lah, tetapi banyak kajian dibuat kenapa sejarah kurang mendapat tempat di hati pelajar, terutama di sekolah rendah. Satu, pelajar akan kata padat dengan fakta, susah ingat tarikh. Perkara lama, macam mana nak lihat perkara lama? Betul ke tidak cikgu benda itu berlaku? Okey, macam mana budak nak visualize, nak mengimajinasikan peristiwa-peristiwa sejarah. Jadi inilah cabaran kepada kita guru sejarah. Okey, ini adalah cabaran kepada kita guru sejarah untuk melihat bagaimana PDP ini kita jadikan ia lebih menarik. Baik, saya teruskan. Jadi banyak juga kajian menunjukkan pendekatan kaedah strategi yang digunakan oleh guru-guru yang kurang sesuai, hingga menyebabkan kurang minat. Jadi apa yang kami cuba lihat ialah saya cuba lihat dalam keadaan semasa. Saya beritahu pelajar saya bagaimana kita jadikan PDP ini menarik dengan adanya teknologi. Dengan adanya teknologi kita gabungkan teknologi dengan pendidikan sejarah. Jadi ini ada beberapa kajian-kajian yang menunjukkan PDP, contoh aplikasi TMK dalam PDP sejarah. Sebagai contoh, kita lihat penggunaan multimedia, membantu. Dan alhamdulillah pelajar saya, nanti saya akan tunjuk contoh, ada pelajar saya minta mereka buat multimedia. Bagaimana multimedia ini kita gabungkan dan dijadikan sebagai satu bahan bantu yang boleh membantu pelajar kita dalam PDP sejarah. Jadi kita lihat, jadi inilah yang kami cuba lihat. Untuk saya hanya cuma gunakan bagaimana kita menggunakan Google Earth, Google Map dan perisian multimedia dalam PDP sejarah untuk tajuk-tajuk tertentu dalam PDP sejarah. Baik, tapi fokus kami ialah untuk PDP untuk sekolah rendah, sebab kami melatih pelajar-pelajar untuk PDP sejarah sekolah rendah. Baik. Jadi antara kaedah terbaik sebenarnya kalau kita belajar sejarah, kaedah terbaik dalam pendidikan sejarah ialah lawatan. Pelajar boleh pergi melihat sendiri peristiwa, melihat, memegang, jadi pelajar akan menguasai tajuk dengan pergi sendiri ke tempat yang menarik, ke tempat bersejarah. Sebagai contoh, kalau kita ajar zaman prasejarah, alangkah baiknya kalau kita dapat bawa pelajar kita pergi ke Gua Niah. Lihat sendiri penempatan pertama, awal manusia, awal zaman prasejarah. Tetapi apa yang berlaku kita tak mampu nak bawa. Lebih-lebih lagi dalam keadaan semasa PKP. Nak bawa pelajar ke Gua Niah susah, ni tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Kalaupun tak PKP, mungkin banyak isu-isu, prosedur-prosedur yang akan kita lalui, yang kita akan jadi kita kena buat. Jadi apa yang kami cuba fikirkan ialah saya beritahu pelajar, kita tak dapat pergi ke Gua Niah, kita bawa Gua Niah dalam kelas. Kita bawa Gua Niah dalam kelas. Jadi sebagai contoh, kalaulah saya mengajar tajuk 5.2, pengasasan Kesultanan Melayu Melaka tahun 4. Jadi saya nak bawa ke pelajar saya, pelajar saya dari Sarawak, nak pergi ke Melaka banyak tempat. Banyak prosedur yang perlu dibuat. Jadi apa yang saya pikirkan, saya bincang dengan pelajar, why not kita gunakan Google Map. Kita guna Google Map. Kita guna Google Map untuk melihat bagaimana apa yang berlaku di Melaka. Tunjukkan pada pelajar bagaimana keadaan masyarakat di Melaka pada awal zaman pemerintahan Kesultanan Melayu Melaka itu, bersidang, bangunan-bangunan yang ada, kita gunakan Google Map. Jadi kita boleh buat lawatan ke Museum Melaka melalui Google Map. Jadi ini satu idea yang saya rasa saya telah laksanakan dan alhamdulillah pelajar saya juga telah laksanakan dalam PDP mereka. Dalam PDP mereka. Jadi banyak tempat yang kami telah lawati walaupun kami secara fizikalnya kami tidak berada di sana. Walaupun secara fizikalnya kami tidak ada di sana. Ini saya beri contoh sahaja, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, saya hanya beri contoh sahaja. Jadi kita teruskan. Satu lagi ialah bagaimana kita melihat Kerajaan Melayu Awal, tajuk 4, Kerajaan Melayu Awal. Menamakan Kerajaan Melayu Awal, ini dia punya standard pembelajaran. 4.1.1 menamakan Kerajaan Melayu Awal, menyatakan lokasi Kerajaan Melayu Awal, menghuraikan kepentingan sumbangan Kerajaan Melayu Awal. Ini boleh digunakan juga. Saya beritahu saja kita gunakan Google Map, kita gunakan Google Earth. Bagaimana untuk melihat Google Map, kita boleh lihat kerajaan-kerajaan Melayu awal yang ada, di mana kedudukan mereka, guna peta yang ada dalam aplikasi yang ada. Begitu cari lokasi, pelajar boleh menerokai sendiri lokasi kerajaan Melayu awal di Kepulauan Melayu, di mana kerajaan Punan, di mana kerajaan Gangga Negara, di mana kerajaan-kerajaan Cihtu, kerajaan Sentubuh. Jadi dengan aplikasi ini, saya rasa teknologi ini sangat-sangat membantu pelajar. Sangat-sangat membantu pelajar dari aspek geografi dengan menggunakan peta yang ada. Dengan menggunakan peta yang ada dalam aplikasi yang ada, pelajar dapat melihat, begitu juga menghuraikan kepentingan sumbangan kerajaan Melayu awal terhadap ekonomi negara. Jadi pelajar kita sendiri boleh menerokai. Pelajar sendiri dapat melihat, mencari sendiri apa yang ada, tinggalan-tinggalan kerajaan Melayu lama. Sebagai contoh, Okey, sebagai contoh kita lihat ini adalah tinggalan kerajaan Kedah Tua. Okey, kerajaan Kedah Tua. Jadi sekurang-kurangnya dengan Google Earth, dengan Google ni kita boleh buat 360 darjah secara 3D. Dia boleh lihat, okey, oh ini rupanya tinggalan kerajaan Kedah Tua. Okay, jadi ini baru satu contoh. Kerajaan Majapahit pun boleh. Jadi kita boleh bawa pelajar. Jadi, tapi apa yang penting pada saya, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, ialah pelajar boleh menerokai sendiri, mencari, mengumpul maklumat daripada apa yang ada daripada Google Map dan Google Earth. Jadi banyak yang boleh mereka lihat. Kedudukan dari aspek lokasi, okey, tinggalan-tinggalan. Dan juga kita dapat lihat apa sumbangan-sumbangan tanpa perlu berada di lokasi berkenaan. Dan ini adalah satu cara yang kita boleh bawa pelajar kita, okey, memahami, menguasai, merasai sendiri peristiwa sejarah ini. Okey, sebab ini penting dalam pendidikan sejarah, di mana mereka melihat bahawa empati dalam sejarah itu sangat penting, meletakkan diri dalam peristiwa sejarah. Satu lagi contoh yang boleh kita lihat dalam kerajaan Melayu awal tadi, bahawa rujuk buku teks. Suruh budak pelajar kita rujuk buku teks ini tahun 4 muka surat 88 hingga 89. Bawa pelajar ini melihat sendiri macam yang saya katakan tadi. Okey, tunjukkan pelajar, kemudian tugasan kita beri, suruh mereka buat rumusan, buat dalam bentuk peta minda dan sebagainya. Okey, dan pada masa yang sama juga cikgu boleh buat QR code bagi membolehkan nota lanjut. Jadi ini adalah contoh yang telah kami buat dalam proses PDP sejarah. Ini memang telah dilaksanakan oleh saya bersama dengan pelajar saya. Dan ada pelajar yang mengaplikasikannya semasa praktikum. Jadi lengkap. Dan tanpa perlu kita melihat membawa bercerita. Biar Google Map, Google Earth membantu kita bercerita tentang kerajaan Melayu awal. Satu lagi perkara yang boleh kita lihat, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, ialah tamadun awal. Saya ajar tamadun awal. Saya ajar tentang tamadun Mesir, tamadun Mesopotamia, tamadun Indus, tamadun Huanghe. Semua tamadun-tamadun ini suruh budak cari di mana lokasi dia. Cari di mana lokasi. Dan pelajar dapat lihat, dengan melihat daripada Google Map, pelajar dapat melihat sendiri bagaimana pembentukan tamadun awal di lembah-lembah sungai. Di lembah-lembah sungai. Jadi nampak kepentingan sungai dalam tamadun awal dekat sini. Dan juga pada masa yang sama, pelajar dapat juga melihat apakah tinggalan-tinggalan tamadun awal. Okey, apakah tinggalan tamadun awal yang yang ada, sebagai contohlah tamadun Mesir. Tamadun Mesir, saya rasa tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, okey, kita lihat termasuk Mesopotamia. Saya ambil tamadun Mesopotamia. Ini kedudukan Mesopotamia. Kita lihat bahawa bagaimana tamadun Mesopotamia meninggalkan kesan kepada masyarakat. Ini adalah tinggalan Mesopotamia. Antaranya ialah, ini adalah tinggalan yang mana tamadun Mesopotamia adalah antara tamadun awal yang menunjukkan ada tempat persidangan. Ada tempat persidangan pada tamadun Mesopotamia. Inilah rupa bentuknya. Ini rupa bentuknya. Tempat persidangan dalam tamadun Mesopotamia. Jadi apa yang saya kongsikan, lagi satu yang boleh kita gunakan ialah street view. Saya minta maaf, saya tak tunjukkan street view. Kalau yang ini kita buat street view, kita akan lihat aplikasi street view, kita akan lihat keseluruhan bahagian daripada tinggalan Mesopotamia ini. Daripada semua tinggalan Mesopotamia ini. Jadi ini antara aplikasi, a simple aplikasi. Yang ini adalah contoh yang saya kongsikan bersama pelajar. Actually, pelajar juga membantu saya. dalam penggunaan aplikasi-aplikasi ini. Dan saya berterima kasih kepada pelajar saya yang banyak membantu saya juga. Cikgu, why not kita buat ini? Cikgu, kita buat ini. Alhamdulillah, saya mempunyai pelajar-pelajar yang begitu bersedia untuk berkongsi. Pelajar saya yang begitu bersedia untuk berkongsi pengetahuan-pengetahuan mereka dalam teknologi. Okey, terutama dalam penggunaan teknologi untuk PDP sejarah ini. Baik, saya teruskan tuan-tuan dan puan. Okey, jadi ini penggunaan perisian multimedia. Ini adalah hasil pelajar saya dalam untuk tujuan pentaksiran. Okey, selepas beliau mengajar pelajar saya, lepas ni kumpulan kerja secara kumpulan, saya katakan selepas awak mengajar tajuk perjuangan kemerdekaan, cuba buat satu bagaimana awak nak taksir menggunakan perisian multimedia. Jadi saya mungkin tunjukkan sahaja sebab ini pun ini adalah apa yang pelajar saya buat. Okey, sebagai pelajar kami buat. Okey, pelajar saya buat ini. Okey, video, ada pembelajaran, ada pengukuhan interaktif. Jadi ini adalah agak slow sikit saya rasa. Saya dah cuba. Ini kandungan pelajaran. Okey, jadi dia ada aktiviti pengukuhan. Jadi inilah yang digunakan oleh pelajar dalam melihat pentaksiran berkenaan. Kita gabungkan. Jadi saya melihat banyak sebenarnya aplikasi-aplikasi yang boleh kita gunakan dalam mengajar sejarah bagi menjadikan sejarah ini lebih interaktif, lebih seronok bagi pelajar kita untuk mengajar. Jadi untuk ini saya akan bersama dengan pelajar saya Muhammad Atib bin Jeffrey, di mana beliau akan menunjukkan satu PDPC secara ringkas sahaja yang dibuat oleh beliau semasa praktikum baru ini. Menggunakan secara atas talian aplikasi ini. Jadi untuk itu saya serahkan kepada Muhammad Atib untuk kongsikan apa yang telah beliau tunjukkan kepada kongsikan kepada pelajar-pelajar beliau semasa praktikum. Jadi saya serahkan kepada Muhammad Atib. Terima kasih.
Okey, terima kasih kepada Dr. Haminah. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Okay, sebelum itu saya akan share dulu skrin. Okay, baik. Okey, pada hari ini saya akan menunjukkan bagaimana saya menggunakan sedikit sebanyak unsur STEM di dalam pedagogi ataupun pembelajaran sejarah semasa saya berpraktikum suatu PDPR yang lalu. Baik. Untuk aplikasi ini ataupun untuk pembelajaran yang saya telah pun laksanakan ini, saya menggunakan aplikasi seperti Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Poly ataupun Google Polygon, dan saya menggabungkan kesemua aplikasi ini di dalam satu platform yang saya namakan sebagai platform ataupun aplikasi Easy Sejarah. Aplikasi Easy Sejarah ini saya membuatnya ataupun saya menghasilkannya menggunakan aplikasi Google Sites sahaja. Okey, baik. Untuk pembelajaran ataupun pengajaran pada PDPR yang lalu, saya mengajar bagi topik 2 ataupun unit 5 iaitu zaman air batu. Apabila kita bercerita tentang zaman air batu, okey, zaman yang telah pun wujud sekitar 2 juta tahun yang lalu, di mana zaman ini tidak lagi wujud pada zaman kita dan juga zaman murid-murid di sekolah. Jadi sedikit sebanyak ia memberi kesan ataupun kekurangan kepada murid-murid untuk membayangkan bagaimana sebenarnya zaman air batu itu. adakah zaman air batu itu dipenuhi dengan ais ataupun ada air batu ataupun ada air, dan macam mana keadaan ataupun cuaca pada zaman air batu itu. Jadi dengan adanya penggunaan ataupun STEM, sains dan teknologi, ini sedikit sebanyak membantu guru-guru dan juga murid untuk lebih memahami topik zaman air batu itu sendiri. Baik. Untuk itu saya tidak ingin membuang masa, saya akan menunjukkan bagaimana saya melaksanakan PDPR ataupun pembelajaran dan pengajaran secara atas talian dengan menggunakan unsur STEM itu sendiri. Baik. Saya mengajar bagi zaman topik 2 iaitu zaman air batu. Okey, kita akan start dengan ini. Okey. Untuk ataupun pada hari berkenaan saya hanya mengajar bagi 3 sahaja, iaitu zaman air batu, perubahan, zaman air batu akhir, dan juga ada satu lagi iaitu K, iaitu standard pembelajaran. Okey, baik. Kita lihat yang pertama dahulu, iaitu zaman air batu. Okey. Saya memulakan saya punya PDPR ialah dengan menunjukkan satu video. Okey, ini sebagai set induksi video Ice Age. Okey, ada prompts dan ada cons dia juga. Okey, bila kita menunjukkan video Ice Age ini, di mana video Ice Age ini terlampau lama, pada sekitar tahun 2008. Tetapi kita jangan lupa bahawa murid tahun 4 mereka lahir selepas 2008, dalam 2010 atau 2011 macam tu. Jadi pro dekat sini mungkin ada murid yang tahu, dan cons ada segelintir murid yang tidak tahu. Jadi saya mengambil kesempatan ataupun mengambil pendekatan untuk tidak bertanyakan soalan-soalan yang di luar bidang murid-murid itu sendiri. Okey. Saya akan menunjukkan video SH ni secara ringkas saja. Okey. Dan dalam video ini akan ada subtitle juga.
Diego, retract the clause, please.
Oh, right. Sorry.
You know, if I didn't know you better, Diego, I think you were afraid of the water.
Okay, baik. Setelah saya siap ataupun selesai menunjukkan video ISH ini, saya akan bertanyakan soalan kepada murid-murid berdasarkan video yang telah mereka tonton itu. Okey, soalan yang saya tanya yang pertama, apa yang ada di sekeliling haiwan-haiwan tersebut? Jadi soalan saya ni lebih menjurus ke arah pemerhatian ataupun apa yang murid tu nampak sahaja dalam video tu. Okey, contoh yang pertama tu apa yang ada di sekeliling haiwan tersebut. Okey, dalam PDPR tersebut ada saya merekodkan ada murid-murid yang menjawab saya nampak ais cikgu, saya nampak ada binatang yang macam harimau tapi dia ada taring. Saya nampak ada gajah tetapi dia punya gading dia sangat besar dan sangat tajam. Saya nampak ada air cikgu, dan saya nampak juga ada kawasan-kawasan yang dikelilingi oleh ais-ais batu. Itu jawapan-jawapan murid yang saya dapat, sebab tu saya bertanya soalan yang pertama. Dan untuk soalan yang kedua saya tanya juga bagaimana cuaca dalam video tersebut. Ada yang cakap cuaca dalam video tu kita tengok sejuk, lepas tu binatang-binatang ni dia ada bulu-bulu apa semua kan, ada banyak bulu. Itu jawapan yang saya dapat. Untuk yang ketiga ialah apa yang berlaku kepada haiwan tersebut di akhir video. Okey, di akhir video ni haiwan-haiwan ni semuanya dia akan jatuh. Sebab kalau tuan-tuan dan puan-puan perasan di awal video tu ada rekahan-rekahan yang berlaku. Semasa binatang ataupun haiwan ni dia jalan di atas permukaan ais tu. Jadi di akhir video binatang-binatang tersebut telah pun jatuh ke dalam kawasan yang banyak ais lah. Itu yang saya tanya kepada murid-murid. Okey, baik, itu untuk set induksi bagi pembelajaran saya yang pertama. Saya nak membuka minda murid-murid. Saya nak bertanyakan macam mana apa yang mereka nampak, apa yang mereka lihat berdasarkan video-video tersebut. Okey, baik. Dan seterusnya lepas saya bagi video, saya akan pergi kepada nota. Ini dah masuk kepada pembelajaran dan juga pengajaran saya sendiri. Okey, saya akan menerangkan apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan zaman air batu. Ini selaras dengan standard pembelajaran 2.2.1 iaitu menyatakan masuk zaman air batu. Okey, saya akan terangkan secara lebih terperinci kepada murid-murid saya apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan zaman air batu dan macam mana keadaan ataupun bagaimanakah cuaca waktu zaman air batu tu. Sebab murid-murid mereka tidak nampak sebab zaman ini berlaku 2 juta tahun yang dulu. Bila kita tunjukkan contoh macam gambar ke ataupun Google Earth dan Google Map kita guna, jadi murid-murid ni secara langsung dia nampak sendiri, oh macam ini rupanya zaman air batu dahulu. Mungkin zaman sekarang dia ada berubah sikit tapi hampir sama. Okey, saya akan tunjukkan gambar-gambar seperti ini. Kawasan yang diliputi oleh ais. Murid-murid boleh lihat gambar-gambar ni. Secara langsung mereka boleh mendapat gambaran awal. Macam mana zaman air batu itu sendiri. Okey. Kawasan laut, daratan dan kawasan pegunungan diliputi oleh ais. Okey. Dalam video-video ni saya telah letak satu link. Okey. Link ni saya letakkan di sini. Okey, baik. Saya nak tunjukkan dekat murid saya menggunakan aplikasi iaitu Google Earth. Dekat sini murid-murid boleh saya bawa mereka ke kawasan-kawasan ini kawasan Greenland. Okey, saya boleh tunjuk dekat mereka bagaimana keadaan sebenarnya. Mungkin tak sama macam zaman air batu tapi seakan-akan hampir sama. Okey, kita dapat lihat dekat sini kawasan airnya diliputi oleh ais dan kalau anda tuan-tuan dan puan-puan perasan di belakang sana pun kawasan gunung dan bukitnya juga diliputi oleh ais juga. Dan tengok dekat kawasan-kawasan daratan. Okey, daratan-daratan ini semuanya diliputi juga oleh ais-ais dan sebagainya. Okey, ini saya menggunakan Google Earth. Memang dia boleh pusing ataupun rotate 360 darjah. Jadi bila kita tunjuk dekat murid-murid, respon yang saya dapat masa tu mereka agak kagum dan terkejut. Macam mereka macam wow, macam itulah mereka macam rasa macam oh macam ni rupanya keadaan bila kawasan air diliputi oleh ais, kawasan gunung diliputi oleh ais, daratan juga diliputi oleh ais. Mereka dah dapat gambaran macam mana zaman air batu itu sendiri. Okey, baik. Dan seterusnya kita pergi kepada apabila saya telah pun memberi nota kepada murid-murid, saya akan buat satu aktiviti. Aktiviti ini saya nak mereka lukis. Bila apa yang mereka fikirkan apabila cikgu menyebut tentang zaman air batu. Bermacam-macam lukisan yang saya dapat. Ada murid yang melukis tentang sungai, ada murid lukis tentang ais, melukis tentang haiwan ataupun binatang yang mereka nampak tadi. Okey. Itu secara ringkas saja untuk aktiviti ini. Baik, kita pergi kepada XP yang kedua ataupun standard pembelajaran yang kedua, iaitu setiap yang berlaku zaman air batu mesti ada perubahan dan kesan dia sendiri. Okey. Perubahan zaman air batu. Okey, yang pertama saya akan terangkan dahulu dalam bentuk nota kepada murid-murid apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan perubahan zaman air batu ini. Apa yang berlaku kepada zaman air batu akhir. Okey, baik. Dan seterusnya saya akan tunjukkan untuk mereka lagi lebih faham ialah video tentang pengglasiran. Okey, untuk maklumat tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, pengglasiran ini ialah proses ais cair. Okey, dan membentuk satu amount of water lah. Okey. Saya tunjuk secara ringkas saja video ni. Puan-puan untuk lihat. Okey. Ini video yang saya tunjukkan kepada murid. Mereka dapat tahu apakah proses pengglasiran, macam mana proses pengglasiran itu berlaku. Okey, daripada ketulan ais yang besar, apabila suhu panas meningkat dan ais telah pun mencair. Beginilah proses pengglasiran dan murid dapat lihat secara tidak langsung. Okey, baik. Dan di dalam PDP saya juga saya membuat eksperimen. Eksperimen ini dibuat semasa PDPR itu sendiri. Okey, saya lebih kepada praktikal, iaitu di mana saya sendiri yang buat eksperimen ini dan saya tunjukkan juga hasil dia dekat sini. Okey, yang saya pegang berwarna biru ini ialah ais yang telah pun cair. Yang ini yang saya pegang botol live ni air yang masih membeku. Jadi eksperimen ni saya buat secara langsung terus di dalam PDPR itu. Jadi murid-murid dia dapat lihat. Dia dapat mengukuhkan lagi kefahaman mereka. Apa yang dimasukkan dengan yang berwarna biru ni? Saya tanya mereka. Dan apakah yang diwakili oleh ais ketul ni? Kenapa ais ketul ni cair, kenapa ais ketul ni tidak cair? Saya terangkan kenapa ia cair. Dan saya tanya balik mereka, apa yang mereka nampak? Apa yang mereka nampak, apa yang berlaku dengan ais yang telah cair dan apa yang berlaku dengan ais yang masih membeku. Itu yang saya tunjukkan kepada mereka. Okey, untuk pengukuhan, masa sama kita buat aktiviti juga kepada murid. Saya beri kuis kepada mereka menggunakan aplikasi WordWall. Okey, WordWall ni soalannya sangat mudah, sangat simple dan menguji balik pengetahuan yang telah pun saya ajar kepada murid-murid itu sendiri. Okey. Okey, lepas tu untuk K ataupun 5 kewarganegaraan tu saya akan menggunakan virtual tour. Ini sangat menarik, virtual tour. Okey, aplikasi yang saya gunakan untuk virtual tour ini ialah saya menggunakan yang pertama ialah Google Maps. Yang kedua saya menggunakan Google Polygon ataupun Poly. Okey. Yang Google Map yang pertama ni saya menunjukkan gambar hutan simpan air hitam. Saya menunjukkan kepada murid-murid macam mana hutan di Malaysia ini. Bagaimana persekitaran hutan, apakah hutan-hutan di Malaysia ini dijaga dan sebagainya. Bagaimana pemandangan, keindahan hutan yang dipenuhi dengan flora dan fauna. Okey. Yang seterusnya juga saya pergi yang lebih dekat. Memandangkan saya mengajar di Sarawak, jadi saya lebih dekat kepada murid-murid itu sendiri dengan menunjukkan sendiri kawasan ataupun tempat mereka berada sekarang. Kalau tuan-tuan dapat lihat dekat sini, ini merupakan Gunung Santubong. Sungai ini adalah Sungai Santubong. Okey, saya tanya kepada murid itu, macam mana keadaan sungai ini? Masih okey? Ada sampah tak ataupun tidak ada? Masih boleh masih boleh nelayan boleh menjala ikan? Masih boleh, mereka kata. Okey, lepas tu saya akan buat satu aktiviti. Okey, baik. Aktiviti ini kalau untuk PAK 21 dinamakan sebagai shout out. Cikgu mungkin familiar dengan aktiviti ini. Aktiviti ini dinamakan sebagai shout out, iaitu di mana pada awal tadi saya telah pun memberi gambaran kepada murid-murid tentang sungai dan juga hutan yang bersih, yang tidak ada sampah, yang tidak ada pencemaran. Tetapi saya bagi satu situasi kepada murid-murid itu. Cuba kamu bayangkan hutan dan sungai yang cantik tadi bertukar menjadi seperti gambar di bawah. Saya terangkanlah untuk gambar yang pertama, apa yang kamu nampak? Hutan dibakar. Okey. Yang kedua ialah apa yang kamu nampak? Penebangan hutan. Pokok-pokok semua dah ditebang. Yang gambar yang ketiga ini, sungai telah pun dicemari dengan orang membuang sampah. Jadi saya memberikan satu situasi ini kepada murid-murid. Saya kaitkan dengan gambaran yang awal tadi yang saya bagi dan saya inginkan jawapan daripada murid-murid. Okey, baik. Ini adalah jawapan-jawapan daripada murid-murid saya semasa aktiviti ini berlangsung. Sebagai contoh, Ani dia kata jangan buang sampah merata supaya persekitaran bersih. Jadi ini yang kita mahukan apabila murid-murid dapat memberi jawapan yang kita inginkan. Maknanya mereka faham apa yang cikgu itu nak dan apa yang mereka inginkan pun mereka faham juga. Okey. Contoh Arif dengan membakar sampah secara terbuka supaya tidak berlaku pencemaran udara. Okey, ini jawapan bukan saya tulis tapi ini jawapan daripada murid-murid. Saya menggunakan aplikasi Chatbot ini. Miza tak boleh buang sampah dalam sungai kerana nanti sungai tercemar contohnya. Okey. Okey, saya rasa sampai situ saja saya punya perkongsian dengan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan berkenaan dengan penggunaan unsur STEM di dalam PDP ataupun PDPR sejarah itu sendiri. Okey, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay. Baik. Terima kasih ya Dr. Haminah, SUHAIBO dan Muhammad Atif di atas perkongsian yang sangat menarik ya. Sesuatu yang bagaimana sejarah ya, sejarah yang maybe it could be a very dry subject ya, it could be a dry subject, but when you put science and technology into the history ya, it becomes very interesting ya. Dan kita nampak di sini ya, dalam STEM juga ya ditekankan bagaimana ya subjek seperti geografi ya, sejarah dan juga pendidikan khas ya, kesemua ni perlukan teknologi ya, teknologi untuk penambahbaikan ya ataupun pemahaman yang lebih baik. Dan saya rasa Dr. Haminah dan tahniah ya kepada Muhammad Atif yang berjaya mengaplikasikan ya pengetahuan dan kemahiran sains ini dalam PDP dan seterusnya, berjaya membawa ni ke peringkat praktikum di sekolah-sekolah, di mana boleh menjadikan subjek sejarah ni lebih menarik ya, lebih menarik ya, dan ada masa depan ya. There's a future for history I guess ya. Dan bagi mereka yang ada soalan dan sebagainya, boleh kemukakan soalan-soalan tu dalam ruangan chat dan sebagainya, dan mengikut prosedur yang kita telah tetapkan lebih awal tu. Dan soalan-soalan tu akan dimasukkan oleh Dr. JC nanti dalam ruangan chat ya. Dan kita akan cubalah menjawab sebanyak mana yang boleh ya. Dan soalan-soalan yang lebih tu mungkin kita akan jawab dalam bentuk video dan akan di-share dalam YouTube-nya yang aktif. Alright, the next, okay. The next, speaker will be Dr. Leonard Lim, yeah, with the title of STEM Bucket, yeah, Spark Your Creativity Using Frugal Items, yeah. So a little bit of bio about Dr. Leonard. Leonard Lim is a lecturer in environmental engineering, the Department of Civil Engineering in UNIMAS. He completed his PhD in engineering from the University of Cambridge, UK. He has been involved in several rural water supply projects, and his experience has motivated him to be part of ACES team to develop STEM Bucket. Yeah. All right. Okay. That's the bio. Okay, so without further delay, yeah, I would like to invite Dr. Leonard Lim to share his topics to the audience. Welcome, Dr. Leonard.
Leonard, you are muted. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks for inviting me to share about STEM Bucket at the STEM webinar today. Hello and a very good morning, everyone. I'm Leonard. So before I talk on today's topic, I would like to take a few minutes to build context on how we come to develop STEM Bucket. So this is to do with developing social resilience. The Malaysian government has been emphasizing about Industrial Revolution 4.0, digital economy, and pledged to work towards sustainable development goals outlined by United Nations. But how is Malaysia managing the COVID-19 pandemic? Last year, Malaysia government took drastic measure calling for lockdown, which managed to flatten the curve but suffered economic losses, but more so many people lost their jobs. So some we can see from YouTube and Facebook are able to create new income opportunities for themselves, such as selling burgers, online marketing, and food delivery. However, many others are not able to survive. So fast forward to now, everyone is hoping to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Yes, to prevent from hospitalization in the unfortunate event of catching COVID-19. But for some, vaccination is their ticket for traveling despite the rising number of cases. So are these people aware about the severity of the current situation? So the big question is, are Malaysians resilient? I will leave this as a food for thought. Okay, education system is a foundation for empowering people and building social resilience. Social resilience is referring to our ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. In the current situation, COVID-19 requires adapting to new norms, for example, maintaining social distancing, good hygiene, wearing masks properly, and so on. So it would be ideal if everyone understand and know their responsibility to play their part to minimize the risk of contracting COVID-19. This is where education system plays pivotal role in shaping future generation. In science, to educate on good health, the importance of keeping good hygiene, how viruses affect human health, and how to overcome. In mathematics, it's about numbers and applications such as measurements, calculation, and statistics. In technology and engineering, first is to learn how things work, and then how to solve problems using means available. So narrowing down to the resilience of education system, when the pandemic struck, education is one area which can still progress as teaching can commence online. It is easier said than done. We hear many teachers and students are struggling to manage classes online, and some are facing connection issues, especially in rural areas. Many gave homework to students just to keep up with the syllabus, but more so, many teachers are seeking ideas to deliver their teaching online. So even in the urban areas. So is our education system resilient? So there's actually a massive inequality between urban and rural in many ways, especially in terms of infrastructure, skilled manpower, and education opportunities. This inequality kills the future of youth in rural areas and nation. Why? Because everyone prefers to do the work, to do office work, better paid, better work environment, better status. No youth would want to work to do hard labor, such as farming in the forest, carpentry, traditional handicraft, because of the social perception, not money making, low education job, and more so hardly appreciated. Academically and mentally, most cannot compete with those in urban areas, ending up they are making no headway. So for youth in urban areas, despite the unlimited exposure to emerging education technologies, children these days are becoming more technology independent as their education system is typically examination based. It's all about knowing how to answer an examination. Yes, knowledge is just a click away, but ending up many youth these days are lacking practical skills, which limits their psychomotor development. So this is a true story. I have some engineering students asking me how to measure flow manually. Okay, some would plagiarize in writing and literally reading from slides when they're presenting. So to me, this is the outcome of education system. They may have made their way into university, but they lack skills and ideas and communication ability, taking things for granted, and most of all, self-confidence in both to share opinion and afraid to make mistake. So is this how we want to shape our future generation? This is one of the reasons why we came up with STEM Bucket, to develop practical skills and bring back the senses in learning STEM. The more senses involved in learning activities, the better one can understand and remember. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. So just a short story about my experience solving problems using local ways, or should it be considered as resources? It was 5 years ago when I was challenged to solve water supply issue in a very remote village. These people have been living on mountain water all their lives and have been asking for clean water supply, but was never provided. Here's the thing, many would expect mountain water to be clean. However, this is only true when there is no rain, which water supply is limited. But when there is rain, the water transports the sediment into the pipes, causing it to be blocked frequently. So for over half a century, they have to clear the blocked pipes regularly and without any treatment. So what I did was to convince them to use rainwater harvesting as the main water source, educated them on producing biochar using garden waste, and modified the commercial water filters so that they could replace the biochar for treating their water. So now they're able to manage their clean water supply sustainably using simple solution. So I would say that it's a success because this 3 years project changed their half-century-old perception about managing water supply. However, that's not the only thing I experienced or take home. The fact is the rural community are way more resilient than us in the city. They can farm their paddy and vegetable, hunt for meat, have healthier diet, cook using charcoal, build houses, and with the skills that they have, they can survive through the pandemic. On contrary, we depend on financial income to get all these things. Otherwise, we can hardly survive through this pandemic. So this is the reason why I've been mentioning about skills. No matter how advanced our technology is, it can never replace nature. So mankind still needs to eat to survive, and agriculture requires skilled manpower to grow food. And technology can be applied to improve the management and productivity. So I can say that the local rice in Sarawak is among the best I've tasted. It is free from pesticides and mostly organic farming. You cannot get any more authentic than the farmers consume the rice themselves. So a circular economy can help people to progress together. This is where rural youth can embark on instead of viewing farming itself as low status job. It could turn out to be the most sustainable job. And in addition, it is a preservation of a heritage. So having shared the background story, STEM Bucket is a small initial step to develop practical skills and to bring back the senses in learning STEM. So far, the learning module we developed are more on basic sciences, which relates to the skills needed for survival, which I will share an example of a module in the next slide. The unique thing about STEM Bucket is using frugal items that can be found in daily lives, sometimes considered as waste. So why frugal items? So STEM Bucket challenges comes in the form of solving problems using means available locally. There is no absolute answer. It can be participated by people of all ages, but the target participants are youth. For primary school level, there is an activity book which they can refer to. And for more advanced level, for secondary school level, they are challenge cards to set the activity. Activity through challenge cards requires participants to conceptualize a solution based on items available in order to materialize the solution. Secondary school students can refer to an activity book or other references if they do not have any idea how to solve it. Activities can be modified to vary the level of difficulty, and it can be done either individually or in group. Okay. So STEM Bucket emphasizes on active participation as in carrying out a practical activity. And this is where the participant develop their knowledge, what we consider as input through experiential learning involving seeing, touching, smelling, hearing, or even tasting. An important element is the output or outcome, which is getting them to reflect on their experience, because this requires them to remember what they did and sharing their views on what they have learned. So at this point, the key is to encourage them to express and share their opinion. So in this STEM bucket, we came up with a standard set of trigger questions in the reflection journal. For example, talk about 3 things I've learned in the activity. 2 challenges faced in the activity, and 1 problem which could not be solved. So this reflection can become a point of discussion on how to improve or overcome the challenges mentioned. Why this is important? Because the sharing of reflection is coming from the individual. It reflects their level of understanding and ability to convey their message. And in some ways, there is a sense of belonging, something of meaning to their understanding. So as you can see here, the discussion is centered around the students, and the things discussed are related to the topic, which is different from teacher-centered or segmented syllabus. And the learning is more fun when there is no quantitative assessments involved. So let's look at an example of a learning module in STEM bucket, which is water. Why we choose water is related to my experience, which I shared earlier, that if the community knew how to manage and treat their water supply, they would not have suffered the cloudy water supply for so many years. So this module is designed to create awareness on clean water, what is considered clean water, how water becomes unusable, and how it can be treated for reuse. So in fact, the basic knowledge is how water filter clean up a water, okay? But the key messages here, clean water is needed for keeping good hygiene to safeguard the well-being. And from the difficulty of cleaning water in the activity, we need to appreciate and protect our water sources from getting polluted by human activities in order to have sustainable water resources. So let's look at the content. As I mentioned earlier, we have activities for all ages. We start off with simple activities for lower primary students, which is to identify matters which could be found in water. So this is where participants will identify items such as leaves, larvae, sand, and pebbles by matching words to the corresponding item. They can do this either on their own or being guided by anyone, the parents, siblings, or teachers. And then they can be told how these things can get into the water. Some through natural means, but others are from human activities. So the next level involves mathematics. First, participants need to complete the arithmetic, and then they need to sort the items based on the number. The same pictures are used to reinforce their memories. For participants who are too young to understand the concept of filtration, at least some might be able to identify items based on numbers and sizes. So in this activity, what we did was you can see that there's still things that can come up from at the bottom of the water filter. Okay, this is to tell to provide the image that the water that is filtered is still not safe for drinking. So how to make it safe for drinking is to boil the water after filtration, to boil the water so that it is safe for drinking. Okay, the next level is to arrange filter media based on the number, which is to arrange items in a certain sequence. So even if they have yet to grasp the concept of filtration, at least at the earlier exercise is likely to form a guide or a basis for them to arrange the filter media. So up to this stage is about developing their cognitive through learning by visual for primary level to at least be able to order things in a certain sequence, in this case by shape and size. So once this part is done, then we can move on to the practical part. So this is where the practical part comes in. As you can see here, it is still part of the activity book to provide a preview about water filter. For secondary school level, they can opt to jump straight to a challenge card for Filter Me. That is if they already know how to filter, how water filter works in theory. They can either refer to early activities step by step or refer to video demonstrations or challenge themselves to come up with their own version of water filter. Sometimes they need to source material to make a water filter. So therefore, there'll be some differences in the material used, which is fine. So in order to figure out alternatives for missing materials, they need to understand the function of the missing materials. For example, fine mesh, which we use in this activity, is used to, the function is to contain sand from flowing out of the water filter. So this is part of problem solving using means available locally. And this is where they learn things through additional senses, which are touch, feeling the material and the weight, smelling it, and then, how to manage the material, how to fill up to make the water filter. So at the end of the activity, we ask them the trigger question as listed in the checkpoint card shown earlier. So when a participant has conducted the activity, they will be able to share what is going on through their minds. Okay. Right. So in addition to the trigger questions in the checkpoint card, we came up with the self-reflection rubrics for participants to assess their progression and interests, to self-reflect how they feel about their learning, how well they think they are coping. Okay, so this is to see their self-confidence level, and also the interest through feelings, which come sometimes not shown through their engagement. So for advanced level, you can throw them additional question like, can there be any other ways or order the arrangement of the filter media, or the way that you arranged just now was the only way, or the way that is being arranged in the recommended in the book is the only way. So something to get them to think and discuss further. So like I said earlier, is getting them to express their opinion and convey their message. So this is an example of a module we came up with in the STEM bucket, and it can be replicated anywhere using items available locally. It is an activity that anyone can participate and experience. Okay. So in a nutshell, STEM bucket is designed for people of all ages, all levels, a level playing field for both academic or vocational, which is the basis for equality and social inclusiveness. So for those who noticed from the beginning of this talk, I've been using certain terms such as empowering people, skills to survive, equality, social inclusiveness, circular economy, knowing societal accountability. All these are key needed to work towards these sustainable development goals and to develop social resilience. So resilience requires creativity to solve problems using means available locally, and more so the right attitude to stay constructive, to progress together. So with this, I would like to thank everyone for taking your time for listening to my talk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Leonard. Wonderful presentation. Yeah, I believe this kind of creative problem solving is a very practical for our Sarawak situation, whereby as we know that many rural areas, they don't have the clean water supply. Whereby I think in a way that you are creating more young innovators, and also is a way to help the rural community and the state government as well, I believe, that can enhance the how we can have the clean water supply for the entire Sarawak, I believe. Yeah, and I think this is the major challenge that we are facing in Sarawak, I guess. And I think your field is really addressing the challenges, that a practical a solution to the community, right? And it goes well with the gamification center, that the post that you're holding currently. Well done, Dr. Leonard, and we thank you very much, for your presentation, and for the question and answers. We believe we will have on the end of the session. And at the same time, for the presenters, speakers, can you quickly look at the chat column, at the chat column? And I think there are a few questions to Dr. SIAW, Dr. HAMINAH as well. And maybe you can respond it in the chat column, and Dr. Leonard as well. Later on, maybe you can have a look at the chat column, and you can may have reply them instantly. Okay, with that, we thank you very much, Dr. Leonard, for your wonderful presentation and sharing. All right. Okay. Okay. The next speaker. So we would like to invite Mr. CHUAH Kiman. The next speaker is an avid gamer and educator, right? And a researcher in educational technology, specifically in learning design and technology enhanced learning. He is currently a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Language and Communication, University of Malaysia Sarawak, and presently pursuing his PhD in USM. He has won several awards at national and international levels. Wow. For various innovations in teaching and learning and assistive technology. He was also the recipient of the UNIMAS Academic Award for the Teaching Award category in 2014 and Best E-Learning Facilitator at International University E-Learning Carnival 2016. Congrats, Mr. Chua. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's not easy to receive all these awards. It takes a lot of courage and your time, and your patience towards what you are doing, right? Okay, a short brief of the synopsis of Mr. Chua Kiman. The search of adopting gamification in the teaching and learning of STEM subjects has led to the question of what actually is gamification. While the idea of gamification is indeed popular, its role in creating meaningful learning or encouraging learners to learn is often wrongly perceived. His talk will highlight some of the core myths and realities of gamification, particularly in adopting it for STEM education. Instances from the implementation of gamification in schools and higher education will also be shared. With that, we welcome Mr. Chua to share his presentation. Welcome, Mr. Chua.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi, and also the rest of the speakers for today. It's really, very honored to be part of this webinar today. And salam sejahtera semua. Semoga masih lagi tenang dalam proses pengajaran dan pembelajaran dalam talian. Just yesterday, a friend who teaches physics called me up and said, I gave up. Enough is enough. I asked what happened, and she replied, I spent 2 weeks trying to gamify this topic on momentum and inertia, and only 5 students participated. A reply to which I responded with, well, at least you have 5. I'm sure my friend is not alone, right? Every now and then we hear teachers, especially in the STEM subject, invested their time, resources, energy to make each lesson interesting. Gamification seems to be the in thing, and the magic does that we normally sprinkle to transform our lesson to be engaging. Despite this excitement about it, there are some myths or rather misconceptions surrounding gamification that I would like to address in today's short talk. Now, before I move further, I would like to, talking about momentum and inertia, I would love you to spend 10 seconds of your time to take a look at this moving train. You might have seen it before and decide which way is the train going. Please keep the answer to yourself first. Don't tell anyone, don't post in the chat. Just keep it to yourself, and then later on I'll come back to this train. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, decide whether where's road. Just like the speeding train, gamification has rapidly entered all levels of education over the last decade. The concept is not new. In fact, it has been around since 70s, especially when our understanding of how humans learn become clearer, particularly in the area of motivation and emotion. Kefahaman kita tentang motivasi dan emosi telah membantu kita untuk memahami bagaimana gamifikasi boleh diserapkan dalam pengajaran dan pembelajaran. Cuma, it sounds so new, but it's actually very old. Why? Because technological advancement has turned gamification into one of the most talked about strategies in almost every field, from education to marketing, all with the aim of motivating users to achieve a certain goal. Kita pergi Shopee sekalipun, we will see elements of gamification. They pressure you to buy something through gamification. Even though you don't want to buy, you end up buying because the game mechanics was used, from collecting coins, timer, counting down of the time that you pressure you to choose that item before it's too late and all that. Ever since we have heard the terms, all these terms, gamification, game-based learning, gameful learning, serious play, serious game, used interchangeably. And many ask whether the distinction between these terms are necessary, whether or not we should know the differences between all these terms. To me, it should be studied at least at the fundamental level, at the very basic level, at least you know the basic differences of these terms, especially for educators, because if you don't know this term well, you tend to simply use it, and then your pedagogy may not be working well systematically. So in order to look at these terms, you can take a look in my next slide, where Prof. Titering, one of the experts in gamification, came up with this simple matrix, a very simple matrix or map, to tell you the differences between all these terms. As you can see, or as shown, the gamification are closely to the element, to the, let me just show you using the pointer, it will be easier. The element part, as you can see, right? So if you are towards game elements, not the whole game itself, you are doing gamification. If you are doing a whole game for educational purposes or learning purposes, you're normally doing serious games, which are very serious and to address a very serious problem in the world. Game-based learning, however, is in between. It can be a bit of gamification, it can be a bit of serious game. Example would be you use Monopoly board game to teach mathematics. You are not developing any new games. You're just making use of existing games for the purpose of teaching and learning. That's game-based learning, because you use whatever is created for you. Gamification, you only use the mechanics. It may not be a game, but you use elements of the mechanics to inject into your teaching and learning. Then the Gamified UK group also did a mapping on the design intent of each category. As you can see here, different game concept or understanding of gamification requires different types of understanding of the intent or the purpose. The bottom line of the game, where it's non-purposeful, means mainly it's for entertainment. You have games like all these multiplayer games online that, games like Among Us, games like PUBG that the teens are playing, or Mobile Legends, those are really games for entertainment purposes. But if you start to apply it to certain contexts, then it could be game-based learning. Or if you use the mechanics in those games for your STEM subject, then it could be gamification as well. However, despite all this distinction, all these terms, there are still three major myths that I think we should really address, because it has overshadowed the understanding on how gamification will work in teaching and learning. Right? So I'm going to talk about all these three myths. The first one is gamification makes STEM learning fun. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that playing or games cannot be fun, but there's a misconception on the word fun for so long that it becomes a terrible cliche in gamification or game-based learning. Cikgu-cikgu guna gamifikasi, fun. Kita buat sedikit game yang ada elemen game, fun. There's always that constant argument about what is the focus of gamification actually. Is it for entertainment? Is it for engagement? Or for attainment or achievement in schools? After all, you still get students who perform brilliantly well with A's, with straight A's, even when gamification is not applied. Are we saying that gamification is not needed at all when it comes to motivating your learners to perform in certain teaching and learning context? Because the problem lies in the understanding of the word fun. We often think that fun means enjoyment with happy faces, but in actual fact, fun is the outcome of a deliberate manipulation of a familiar situation into a new way. It's about novelty. You take a look at the example given earlier, right? The use of ThingLink in showing certain context, the use of Google Earth to show a virtual tour for history subject. You have STEM bucket. All these are novelty, because when it's new, it creates the excitement, it creates the sense of curiosity, and learners will feel fun because it's new. Essentially, fun is the feeling of finding something new in a familiar situation. It's looking for that constant pleasure of surprise within the usual experience, because our imperfect minds tend to lead astray. Our mind is very hard to please. We are constantly looking for something new, right? And I love this quote by Dr. Roman. He aptly said, the worst enemy of fun is to be told to have fun. Remember the first time when you tell someone, I love you? The first time, it marks a whole new level of intensity, joy, and commitment. But months, years, decades later, I love you works more like I'm fine. How are you? You don't really feel that intense joy of saying I love you anymore after years and decades of saying it for so many times. Fun in learning is just like that. It's a placeholder now, more than a description. This is fun. When you ask your learner, sedap tak ataupun fun tak kita main ni ataupun saya guna Kahoot ni fun tak, then student will say it's fun. Because now saying it's fun, it's similar to it's fine, it's okay, nothing went wrong. Everything seems fun, right? We think fun is enjoyment, but in reality, it often feels quite the opposite. A fun match of football, for example, might involve physical or emotional injury, but people still say it's fun. A fun round of computer game might involve intense yelling. You can shout at each other. You can have that sense of frustration, but you still enjoy the game and you still say it's a fun game. Ultimately, we can't command a mandatory fun. We must let it happen, let it fuel the desire to learn among the students. So you can't force people to have fun just because you use gamification. It doesn't work that way. So I love how Nicole Lazaro introduced this anatomy of fun during play or gamification, and she categorized it into 4 broad types. Just to let you have a general understanding of how do we define fun in gamification. The first one is easy fun, which is the most commonly used in teaching and learning, the quick win, right? Where learners enjoy something new through exploration or activities, but it usually fades away pretty fast. You create the excitement today, next week if you use it again, maybe the excitement is still there, the third time, no more. I call this the effect of Panadol, right? The maximum that you can take is 2. When it's more than 2, then you start to feel dizziness and people don't like it anymore. And then as a teacher, sebagai seorang cikgu, that's where you feel very tired because you need to keep on thinking of a new thing. Tu yang susah jadi cikgu zaman sekarang because these learners are very hard to please, right? Then there is people fun, where amusement actually comes from competition, cooperation, or even peer pressure. Sometimes learners feel that it's fun, not because of the game, not because of the content, it's because they love to be together, the joy of being together. This happens a lot in sports, right? You play the sport, not because you really like the sport, but because your friends are playing, you would love to join them as well. The third one is hard fun. As opposed to easy fun, this is more like achieving something which is difficult at first, requires a bit of careful thinking or strategy, but once you hit it, you feel that sense of joy. Happens a lot in esports, not in sport, but more like the online multiplayer games, when players keep grinding and keep on shooting and this and that, but they feel fun every round. If you ask someone who is an avid gamer, they will tell you not a bit of boredom in, repeating the same thing over and over again for so many times. And then the last one is serious fun, pretty much related to serious play, where excitement is drawn from fulfilling a greater meaning to say when you achieve something outside of the classroom, you are fulfilling a need in the society, like what Dr. Leonard mentioned. The STEM bucket is a good example. If you gamify it, it creates a sense of meaning because they're solving real world problem of getting clean water. That is actually serious fun. And they will tell you, we enjoy doing this because we're solving the real problem. Of course, there are many researchers who propose different categories, but I find Nicole's categorization is easier to follow and it's good to use as a guidance for us whenever we plan things. So kalau cikgu-cikgu rasa macam tertekan sikit, kalau rasa easy fun all the time, then you don't have to feel like tak payah rasa salah ataupun bersalah kerana easy fun memang macam tu. It will not take long. So you don't have to like torture yourself to think how come, macam my friend tadi dah buat game for 2 weeks and then only 5 yang participate. Because it's easy fun, just easy going and you shouldn't take it so seriously, right? This is another example of serious fun, folded game, which is very popular now. If you're teaching biology or even normal science or chemistry, you should try this folded game. It's free. You can ask your student to install. What happened is a lot of real world problems are put into folded and the learners can actually try to find out the problems. Like you can see the headline here. The gamers usually take only 3 weeks to solve a problem. Scientists took like years to solve, but because when they put it online, all the world, collaborate to solve the puzzle, then they solve it within 3 weeks. This is the amazing part of gamification if you really applied it well and motivate learners. And the best thing about this folded is no rewards, right? It's amazing when no rewards and people are still solving it for the sake of humanity, all right? Another example of serious play would be escape room. I shared this a lot in my sharing or workshop, on YouTube and also on my channel. One tool that you can use to create escape room challenge is to use Genially. You inject a bit of game mechanics for escape room. It creates a gamified inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning means you always encourage the learners to think beyond whatever you have given them. The input that you have given them, if you apply it nicely using game mechanics of escape room, you'll be able to trigger that kind of fun beyond the easy fun. It could go up to maybe hard fun at least, right? If you're interested to learn more about this, you can go to my channel, just search through my YouTube channel. I have one video specifically of this, but it's in Bahasa Melayu, just to cater for our Malaysian teachers, right? Myth number 2, or the second myth, is probably the most misleading one, I would say. There's always this craze to focus on rewards whenever a topic is, gamified, especially in STEM subject, because these subjects are often perceived as difficult. Cikgu-cikgu science, technology, mathematics, engineering, they tend to think like these subjects are very dry, so I need to put reward so that the learners will be excited to try all these things. While point badges and leaderboards are game mechanics that can be used in gamification, they are often misused. Why do I say that? Gamification sets out to focus more on intrinsic motivation, but all these things like point, badges, and leaderboard are actually promoting extrinsic motivation to promote. We are supposed to use intrinsic motivation to kind of like promote self-determined learning or lifelong learning through gamification. But the obsession of rewards make it no different, make it no different than test score or class ranking. Kalau kita tengok points yang kita bagi sama je kan test score. Leaderboard jadi macam class ranking. Apa beza dia gamification dengan kaedah yang sedia ada? Tak ada beza pun. In fact, kalau you bagi markah yang physical dalam exam, I think student lagi motivated compared to the game, sebab pelajar akan tanya, main game ni ada markah ke tak? That's why gamification is often misused. Points, rewards in gamification are often misused, and it leads back to the old problem, or student focusing on the marks, for student focusing on the points, rather than the whole learning process of gamified learning experience. This is, again, Prof. Didati. I love to quote him because he's one of the pioneers in gamification. And if you review his studies, you will find out that whatever I'm telling here is quite true. When gamification was introduced in the early 70s, even up to 90s, people are still seeing the magic of gamification. But these days, because of technology, gamified lessons now look more and more similar to the usual lesson, but wrapped with superficial layer of gamified rewards. Sama je, right? Students complete tasks just for the sake of getting those rewards without demonstrating competence. They buat just for the sake of getting the points. This is why students will lose interest in participating when the rewards are no longer there, ataupun the rewards are no longer appealing. Familiar? Back to the spoon feeding, back to the carrot and stick techniques again. Surely gamification is not just about extrinsic rewards alone. So we have to be very careful of the reward system in gamification. If we go back to real gamification theory, you will realize that rewards are actually not compulsory, right? Not compulsory, just that the reward game mechanics is always misused in the design of gamified learning, learning lesson or even games, right? In essence, it means gamification can't fix poor content. If your content is poor, it will remain poor. Tak kisahlah kita guna gamification berapa kali sekalipun, if our content is poor, it's going to be boring and not meaningful at all. Kan? Kalau kita tengok macam mana Dr. HAMINAH gunakan Google Earth untuk buat the virtual tour to Melaka. That's interesting and it's meaningful because student can relate to the subject of history. If you just suddenly ask them, jom kita pergi Melaka, buat apa? Beli cincau. Contoh dia. It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way anymore. Because if you ask a learner to read 5 articles and get 10 points or get 10 marks, it would be the same as just read the 5 articles. If the articles remain irrelevant, you just randomly choose the articles are boring, you yourself have not read the articles, but you ask your learners to read, doesn't make sense, right? So the content for any gamified lesson should be developed based on game design thinking with careful consideration so that each part is linked meaningfully through progression. This is why kalau kita tengok carta yang I tunjukkan tadi, game thinking tu harus ada daripada awal. Kita design our material pun ada elemen gamification daripada awal. It's not just about suddenly saya dah buat, saya copy buku teks, saya scan buku teks, lepas tu saya bagi point ala gamification ataupun saya tukar dalam Kahoot sikit. It doesn't work that way anymore, right? Myth number 3, which is the last myth that I would like to share, is the belief that gamification is mainly for kids or young learners. You'll probably get the feedback such as, I'm old, I don't play games, right? The truth is gamification can be applied across age groups. There's no issue about age at all. In fact, the older we get, the more we need to immerse ourselves in gamify, because it would increase our intrinsic motivation to keep us going, actually. Because kids, they are natural players, you know, they are into play since young, you know, they are already programmed to play. But adults tend to lose this sense of play as they grow older. So the more older we get, in fact, we should play more games, right? This is another confirming statement from Christy. Why do we play games? Because it gives that forgiving environment. You know, when you play games, it's okay to make mistake. You game over, you start balik, right? You game over, you start balik. There's nobody going to judge you that you're so poor a gamer or whatever. You keep playing and playing until you improve. Because the game environment gives you that safe zone or safe space to continue to explore, to continue to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. That's why people mind game berkali-kali, because they want to pass that level, right? So, and from the teacher point of view, if you do gamification and you don't allow this kind of freedom, you don't allow creative answers, you just accept one answer, then the gamification will not work well, because macam test lah. You buat gamification, tapi you accept only one answer, you don't allow creativity to flourish, might as well just do a test rather than calling it a gamified lesson or whatever, right? This is just an example, a quick one. We're not going into detail, but just to tell you how I applied gamification in my course called Computational Linguistics for a whole 14-week course. If you take a look at their faces during the session, they are all very serious, solving problems and all that. But when we did the survey at the end of the course, when we bring them to to pitch in the real world context of magic, they get very excited and they rated the course very high. In fact, this is one of the highly rated course in my portfolio, 98.9%. I'm proudly, like one of the highest highly rated course. The 1.2 is more to the difficulty, the challenges of the environment, the learning environment, because of the room that we had. Sorry. And then we did a survey just to wrap up the findings a bit with Associate Professor Dr. Fitri. So we managed to kind of gather the feedback, and we noticed that actually the students don't care about the marks, don't care about the points. They just realize that because this subject is so dry, and these are all art students or humanities students, they are from linguistic program, suddenly they are told to learn about natural language processing, machine learning, they got very blur, AI and all that. But because of the gamified experience, they learn in a systematic manner, and they see the real need for them to learn this. Because I told them, computational linguistics, if you're really good at it, when you go out, you don't have to work with DBP all the time, because linguistic students, they tend to think, oh, kerja dengan DBP sahaja. When you have computational linguistics, you can work even in IT companies and all that. So they see the relevance of completing all these challenges, and they rate all the challenges very high. I have students who get B or C, still, come and tell me they learn a lot from the course. You don't get feedback from A students only, So just to recap whatever I've told you, and based on whatever has been presented by the previous speakers, what I noticed is I can summarize gamification, success factors of gamification in STEM into 4 C's, right? First one is creativity. Teacher persona is key, right? You can see example in all these innovative teachers, they have a different persona when they are teaching, all right? It's a bit different. They get excited about the game that they develop, they get excited about the lesson they develop, right? Learning content, back to the point just now, your content itself has to be creative, cannot be just scan, copy from textbook alone. You need to have some design thinking into it. Curiosity, you should focus more on curiosity, inquiry-based pedagogies like problem-based learning, challenge-based learning. It works very well for gamification. And the most important thing in curiosity is risk-free experimentation. I know we can't afford this when it comes to science, like you cannot afford to let students keep on experimenting because the school will be, paying a lot of things. So, but at least you try to let them experiment using digital tools or whatever you can find, like what shown earlier. You can actually use Google Earth, which is actually cost saving. Tak perlulah bayar untuk travel all the time. Because of that, you can do risk-free experimentation. Connection, make sure students are they see the connection between the whatever you're teaching them to the real world, because many students who neglect school are not because they are dumb or they dislike learning. They just don't see the purpose of learning the subject they are taught in class. They don't see the link, right? And when you link them, you have to link with the immediate community that they are in, right? Last one, of course, is the social interaction. Another part of connection is social interaction, encourage them to interact. And last one is consistency. This is the key, I think. A lot of teachers, bila dia nak buat gamification, whenever they want to try and apply gamification, they are not consistent, right? They are not consistent. This week they are like that, and then next week they are different, and then students get confused, you know, in terms of the kind of mechanics that they want to use or the tools that they want to use. So be consistent in that sense, in terms of creating the experience and also autonomy. Give a bit of freedom to your learners from time to time and make sure you're consistent. If you give 10 marks for one task for that student, suddenly you give 5 marks to this one, then the one who get 5 marks will question you, right? And then they start to see some inconsistency in the way you do things, and they may not be interested to continue. Whatever I told you in 4C is summarized by Professor Sylvester here, where he says that, you know, it's about intended learning experience in gamification, which should allow discovery of new idea, knowledge to free play. Free play means not free, like free of charge, but freedom, right? Exploration and social interaction. So you can get hold of his book as well to get to know more about, you know, his book on game science in hybrid learning space. So you can just Google his name later to find out. Back to the train. So I'm going to end now. Back to the train. So I asked you just now whether the train, you know, which direction is the train going? If you focus hard enough, you will see the train going towards the tunnel. If you focus another way, you'll see that the train actually came out of the tunnel. So which one is the answer? If you focus really, really hard, you will realize that this photo is actually being manipulated. They are neither towards the tunnel or out of the tunnel. There are actually 4 frames only in this GIF. 2 trying to please you towards, and then the other 2 is going out. Why do I show you this? Well, it signifies our focus in whatever pedagogical approaches that we want to use in STEM education, be it gamification or any other innovative approaches. We should really stay focused on one and get it to work, because honestly, we just cannot afford to be trapped in that endless loop of not trying hard enough. Because we have so many things, so many tools, we end up don't want to do anything, not trying hard enough, because we're overwhelmed with this loop of going back and forth. We might as well just focus on one direction, go towards it and get it done, right? With that, thank you very much. I would also encourage you to follow us on Facebook and also website. Find us on Creative Culture. We have a lot of sharing on gamification and also activities related to gamification that you can take a look, and some example case studies that we have done so far. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and have a good day.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chua. It's a wonderful sharing. Yeah. Gamification. Yeah. Gamification, socialization, interpersonal skills. Yeah. I think you are born with the natural talent with the interpersonal and creativity, I guess. Which not everyone has that kind of talent. Yeah. And it's a fantastic sharing, yeah, Mr. Chua. I love the part that when you present the anatomy of fun. Anatomy of fun, that capture my eyes, you know. Easy, fun, people fun, challenging. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Life is full of challenge, you know, and all life is always full of fun, you know.
Yes.
So either way, how we take it, you know, how we explore it, how we describe the world that we live, you know, and what is our way forward in our teaching and learning and interdiscipline in the STEM education. Well done, Mr. Chua.
Thank you.
We really feel honored for your sharing, and I believe you have a long way to go, and it's true that you are the right person to get the international award, you know. Continue with your good work. You know, there's more for sharing. You know, it's fantastic that Sarawak, we have such a brainy guy who can really explore and share, you know, his talent to the students and to the teachers as well. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Chua, and I hope once you complete your PhD, it is a worth PhD that is marketable. You know, we call it a marketable PhD. All right, and of course that will benefit the larger society as well. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chua. With that, next we will go and we will proceed with the question and answers session. We open to the question and answer session. there are quite a number of questions, Mr. Chua, I think in the chat column. Is there an
Okay.
application where teacher can use for gamification? This first question, boleh saya minta link untuk escape room apps yang Chua gunakan? Okay. The third question, using gamification learning requires much higher level skill sets for teachers, especially who may be poor in IT skills, you know. How can we build this skill set, right? And I think the fourth question is, what is the critical difference
Yeah.
between gamification and game-based learning?
Should I answer first or?
And I believe
Okay.
you can take them to answer later.
Okay.
Right?
Later,
So with that, I'll hand over to Dr. JC for the question and answers session, and also for the closing remarks from Dr. J. Lin Minoy. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. JC.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi. And also thank you to all our wonderful speakers today for sharing your knowledge and experience. I think today's talk is really amazing. We don't have that much time, but we'll come to the question and answer now. We are only in 5 minutes, but I think if the rest of the listeners who are listening, if you don't mind, we may extend for another 10 to 15 minutes because there are quite a number of questions. But if you do have some more questions that is coming in, we would want to answer all the questions in this session. But if we cannot answer some of the questions, we publish response in our website, creativeculture.my, or you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You just search for Creative Culture Malaysia. All right. And also, I like the idea that Mr. Ravi mentioned that we can even video our question and answer, and then we put it up. I think that's gamification. All right. So without taking too much time, perhaps we can start first for the first speaker. There's a list of questions, but I think if we can, I've already shared some of these questions. We'll start with Dr. SIAW. If we can have some answers, because some are quite similar sort of questions. So
Sure.
I think maybe I can summarize some of it. I think a lot of your participants, listeners, are interested in using ThinkLink, and I think they want to find out how to use it. How do they share it with? These are very quite technical sort of questions. How do they share with the students? Can they merge? I reckon. Can they use it with Google Classroom or merge with Google Classroom? What are the interactive activities? Those sort of questions first. Maybe those are the technical ones. Can you answer, please, Dr. SIAW?
Yeah. Let me share the screen.
Sure.
Right. Sorry. Okay. Did you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Well, seeing Zoom now.
Right. I tried to navigate to the page.
All right.
All right. This is the page. Okay. Sorry for the different pages. Okay. For ThinkLink, of course, you can share through Google Classroom. How you share it is once your project is done, like my project here, the sample project. So there is a share button up the top right-hand corner. Can you see the share button there? You just click the share button. Then you can see either you can embed the code, right? If you have a web page created using Google Site, you can actually embed the code there, or you can get the shared link. All right, and then just copy it and share it through the Google Classroom using the create link features there. Okay, of course, your student must have the ThinkLink account first, otherwise he or she won't be able to access. And then you have to make the features as public, right? Once when you share this project, there is a features for you to choose to change it to public, which I can't show you now. But when you do your project, you can actually see that features. You just click it as public, then students will be able to access. All right, so there's one way to share through a classroom. The other question just now is interactive activities inside here. I read the question just now. What is the limit to tagging like what I did just now, the tagging hotspot onto your pictures or your 360 videos? Actually, I think there is no limits, but in terms of graphical design, I don't think you want to crowd everything into one page. It's a good design to spread out the tagging of your pictures probably into different pages so that you don't crowd one picture with too many information. Okay, so that is the one good design principle that you should follow. You should spread out the hotspots on the pictures, probably having few pictures for one topic. Another question that I read is about the how to make the activities interactive using augmented reality. So for my understanding with augmented reality is that you have to create the target for the student to scan, right? So probably you have to share the target link by embedded through the thing link here, right? You create the hotspot to embed the link for your target, and your students has to have another device, right, to scan your target for the augmented reality activities. Another features is actually ThinkLink can create virtual reality, right? If you have the VR 360 videos or whatever, you can have VR features that, let me show you one sample switch I did. It's not complete yet anyway. Wait, sorry. Okay, I go to my project. All right, I have one sample which I created the 360 videos of my IPG museum. We have a museum here, very small museum. So I created the 360 videos, and actually you can view this one using the Google VR headset, right? If you have the VR headset, you can view it and you can navigate inside there. And it's not complete yet, this project actually. So you have the 360 views inside there, you can navigate. Of course, you can tag with some information inside there, which I haven't done it yet. So you can have VR view using ThinkLink. Actually, this is a very good application. For teachers, just now I mentioned it can be, you have the free version, but if you want to use advanced features, of course, you have to pay for it, all right? You have to pay for it. In terms of, let's say you want to collaborate a project with the students, you have to use a paid plan, right? You have to pay for it. And in terms of using the offline version, actually you can use offline version with this ThinkLink, but you have to pay for it. It's not free. All right, so it's very good if you can get the paid plan. You have to pay a bit to get the offline version to use with the student, especially now pandemic time. Offline version will be very good for the students. So you can use for VR, AR, no problem. So for the AR, you have to embed the target, okay, for the AR to share with your students. I think another question is about how do you check whether the students have acquired the critical thinking skills after doing the project? One way to quick check on the critical thinking is probably, normally we ask the students to present the project. So we can ask high order thinking skills questions, see whether they can answer, see whether they can give justification based on what they have created. That is one quick way to check on their critical thinking skills. That is what I can see. For long-term a way to find out whether the student actually acquired the skills that they need to acquire, probably we have to do some kind of a research, all right? Some kind of a research intervention to actually find out whether it really works or not, what we have actually proposed here. Right, I think those are some of the questions that I get from the chat box just now. Any question I left out, Dr. JC?
Let me have a look. I think some says, can we get a distributor invite code? I think we need to have.
Yes, I think you have to pay for it. I don't think you can get that one free.
I guess for now, I think that's it.
Right.
All
Yeah.
the
Thank
questions.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Right,
you.
so I stop sharing. Yeah, no problem. Welcome.
All right. So the next speaker's question, Dr. HAMINAH and Muhammad Atif. We have a few questions from the audience as well. Penggunaan Google Map dan ada aplikasi sangat bagus. Masalahnya di Sarawak, terutamanya di luar bandar. I'm not so sure, tak habis mungkin ayatnya. Bagaimana teknologi ini tidak dapat dipakai dengan jayanya kerana ketidakstabilan internet? Ada cara yang sesuaikah untuk menggunakan offline teknologi ini? So this is a technical sort of question. Again, bila tak ada teknologi lah, bagaimanakah kita menyelesaikan? Adakah option lain? Can we leave it there? Dr. HAMINAH?
Okey, terima kasih Dr. Jessie. Okey, kepada yang bertanya, kami juga hadapi masalah ini kepada pelajar-pelajar kami yang PDPP, yang program program PDPP, pelajar kami berada di luar bandar. Jadi apa yang saya kongsikan, kami kongsikan bersama pelajar ialah, saya kata bila ada kesempatan untuk ada internet, jaringan internet, cikgu boleh download. Okey, boleh muat turun. Okey, muat turun bahan-bahan berkenaan dan lepas itu buat dalam bentuk PowerPoint. Share dengan pelajar. Jadi ini ada satu alternatif yang mana boleh digunakan oleh guru, oleh cikgu semua. Maknanya walaupun masalah internet ni saya faham, masalah internet jangan kata luar bandar, kadang-kadang dalam bandar pun kita hadapi. Okey, tetapi apa yang boleh kita buat ialah kita muat turun. Bila kita ada kesempatan, kita muat turun gambar, kita muat turun video. Dan itu boleh dibuat secara offline. Okey, kita boleh ajar menggunakan secara offline. Jadi pada saya masih ada kesempatan bagi kita untuk menunjukkan kepada pelajar kita. Okey, saya dapat juga bahan itu yang saya nak ajar. Saya guna, okey, bila saya ada line, saya ambil. Lepas itu bila tunjukkan pada pelajar menggunakan ini. Jadi saya rasa ini satu alternatif yang boleh cikgu gunakan. Okey, saya rasa boleh dibuat, walaupun tanpa ni internet. Okey, Dr. Jessie.
Alright, terima kasih Dr. Haminah. Soalan kedua ni agak mencabarlah. Saya akan I will mention this. Apakah kemungkinan subjek sejarah topik zaman air batu ini menggabungkan scratch coding programming untuk tujuan pembelajaran belajar sejarah sambil belajar coding?
Yes. Saya dengan Atif sudah bincang tadi.
Okey, silakan.
Okey, saya dengan Atif sudah bincang. Jadi kalau kita lihat subjek ini bukan saja setakat tajuk untuk tajuk zaman air batu, tajuk-tajuk lain juga boleh kita gunakan scratch coding ni. Okey, jadi maknanya kita boleh buat game. Okey, ni Encik CHUAH Kiman tadi dah nampak idea tu. Thank you. Okey, dah nampak idea tu bagaimana kita nak gunakan coding, scratch coding ini untuk kita masukkan dalam proses pengajaran dan pembelajaran untuk air batu. Ini satu tambah baik. Jadi satu penambahbaikan yang boleh kami fikirkan, kita fikirkan bersama dan mungkin nanti insya-Allah kalau ada ni kita akan kongsikan dapatannya nanti. Okey? Jadi saya rasa boleh. Saya dengan Atif kata, betul cikgu, dia kata, boleh buat ni, kata. Jadi maknanya masih mampu kita boleh buat, okey, kita buat scratch coding tadi untuk zaman air batu. Okey?
Terima kasih. I think soalan kedua, ketiga tu related jugalah. I hope the participants can capture. It's quite similar, ya. Ada satu question kata, boleh share link Google Site sejarah tadi?
Boleh, tak masalah.
But yeah, if we can, when we nanti kita collect some of answers and then we buat video ke and then we put it into documents, so all the links will be there as well, ya.
Okey, boleh buat yang Muhammad Atif waktu dia buat PDPR itu memang kita rakam. Jadi nanti kita share daripada mula sampai habis. Dan untuk pengetahuan semua, waktu Muhammad Atif mengajar, budak penuh dalam kelas. Semua attend. Semua attend. Attendance penuh. Jadi tak ada isu kata seorang pelajar, dua orang pelajar. Tapi waktu itu memang nampak bahawa Atif pun dah share. Jadi ada penglibatan pelajar sangat aktif. Okay?
Oh, very good. I'm really impressed. Kalau content after kalau I nak summarize lah the talk today, kalau content relevant, interesting, pelajar pun minat. Mereka tak nak datang, makan pun minum kopi ke apa ke pun depan. Ya, kan, and belajar. Alright, so seterusnya ya. I think that's all for the questions. Seterusnya kita kepada Dr. Leonard punya question. So Dr. Leonard, I've shared with you some of the questions. I shall read the first questions first, yeah. Can you give examples of the form? I think it's share examples of form, checkpoints, questions, and all the stuff in STEM bucket with us. And how do you define STEM bucket? Can it be seen as a collection of apparatus and items to do a particular project, or can this STEM bucket be looked as a mobile science kit or math kit? After you, Leonard.
Okay, many thanks for the questions. I think for the first one, we can actually share it through the Creative Culture website. I think that's not an issue. I think that's what they want, right? They want to get the sample of the checkpoint questions, and also the trigger questions, and also the self-reflection rubrics. So I hope that answers the first question. The second question is on the STEM bucket itself. So what is STEM bucket? Actually, I think based on the questions that is being asked to all the presenters so far, I think we need to understand that we as educators, we are role models for our students. We need to be creative in coming up with our own content, but it's no harm to share ideas, right? To get ideas from elsewhere and to incorporate it into our teaching. So basically, coming back to the point of STEM bucket, is basically, we set a set of items as the boundary. So I give you a set of items, and then from there I give you a challenge. So try to solve the problems using the items that is available. So that will get them to think of how to solve using the means that is available, right? So this one indirectly is to get people to think like, okay, we have to make something out, do the best out of the situation, not doing the best, is doing making the best situation, coming out with the best solution out of the situation. So that is part of the attitude that is required for coming up with building the resilience. So yes, for STEM bucket, you can either call it as a mobile science kit or a math kit that you can even create it on your own. The concept itself is that as teachers, if you want to come up with your own set of items, it is also okay. But what we do in the STEM bucket is that we come up with items that is commonly found around us, so that will be, if you have it in your own place, you can get it. But if you don't have it, you can always look for alternative material to replace that, or either that, or you just get them to make do with what they have. So that will spark their creativity. They have to figure out a solution to solve the problems. So and yes, there's no need to purchase a specific set of components like Arduino or Legos, that you have a certain components that you need to purchase. It's about finding things that is available locally. It's about sourcing and identifying material that can be used. So for example, water filter, if there's no charcoal, what can be used, right? So you can either use tea bags or the coffee powder instead. So yeah, so I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard. Yes, indeed. Maybe one last question here. How do you integrate features of STEM bucket and align it with the school syllabus and lessons? And could you give one example?
Okay, so basically, I think when we came up with this STEM bucket thing, it's more to getting participants to think about how to solve problems that is related to daily life. Okay, so and what we see is that children's learning these days is actually beyond the four walls of the classrooms. They are learning things from the social media, from the YouTube and so on. So, and also the other thing is that they are learning things by relating. Okay, relating to the topic itself. So for example, when we do an activity like the water filter just now, so the context is about how to clean the water. So what is the mechanism for filtration? Basically, it's just to trap things that is bigger using a smaller opening, so that what you get at the end is a cleaner water with less impurities in the water. So so the thing is that if we talk about the secondary school level, then we can challenge them. Okay, how do you think you can improve on the design? Or is there a specific way of ordering the layers of the filter media, or that is the only way? You know, what is the how do you want to improve it? You know, maybe you want to how to make it more effective in terms of the usage of material. So those are the things that you can challenge them so that they can think further. It's not that, oh, I solved this problem already, then that's the end of it. You know, I'm successful. So what we want to tell them is that the learning doesn't end there. You know, there's always room for improvement, how to become better. And this is what we need to do in order to build the kind of constructive attitude. It's not to be just contented by achieving something, you know.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard. We are pressing in time.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I just want Dr. HAMINAH added something as well. So maybe Dr. HAMINAH, I pass the time first to you to add to the early question. Thank you.
Terima kasih Dr. Jessie. Minta maaf semua. Okey, untuk berkaitan dengan scratch tadi, saya dimaklumkan oleh pelajar saya, kontak pelajar. Terima kasih kepada Dr. SIAW. Pelajar saya sebenarnya kami telah pun diberi pendedahan oleh Dr. SIAW tentang scratch, dan ada pelajar kami yang memang, I think Dr. SIAW pun dah tahu, ada pelajar yang memang dah menghasilkan daripada scratch berkenaan, hasilnya memang dah ada. Jadi maknanya boleh diaplikasikan. Okey, dan terima kasih kepada Dr. SIAW lah yang telah memberi pendedahan kepada pelajar sejarah saya lah. Okey.
Actually, we have conducted the computational thinking course with this batch of students. So we exposed them to this microbic, the use of microbic, and also Scratch to show the implementation of the computational thinking skills. So some of the students, if they do the project properly, they have the basic skills, right? Yeah, Dr. HAMINAH, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. SIAW. Thank you, Dr. HAMINAH. Okay, the last set of questions for CHUAH Kiman. I think you have seen the questions, but perhaps I will just mention the 4 questions, and then maybe you can summarize them. Is there an application where teachers can use for gamification? Question 2, boleh saya minta link untuk escape room aplikasi yang CHUAH Kiman recommend tadi? Question ketiga, using gamification learning requires much higher levels skill sets for teachers, especially who may be poor in IT skills. How can we build these skill sets? Question 4, what is the critical differences between gamification and game-based learning? Off to you, Kiman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jessie. The first question I typed in the YouTube chat box already, but the common tools used are WordWall, EducaPlay, Flippity, Genially, even Tingling can be used for gamification. I've seen a lot of people use it for scenario-based gamification where you move from certain place to another place with clicking the link for quizzes and all that. So these are the tools that you can use. Link to my escape room would be bit.ly/wow, W-O-W, room 1, bit.ly/wow, room 1, right? I typed it in the chat already. Or you can just search in my YouTube for Escape Room CHUAH Kiman, and then you will see the link given at the end, the description of my video. Using gamification learning requires higher level skill. Actually, no. Gamification requires a range of skills from very low until very high. Like I told you just now, it depends on what you want to achieve, whether it's the easy fun or the serious fun or the hard fun. It really depends on what you want to achieve. A lot of teachers, when they listen to the word gamification, it means you have to use IT. You don't have to. Like what Dr. Leonard, demonstrated, you can use tools around you, right? Water bottle, rocks or whatever. But the reason why people think gamification is IT based now is because of the remote teaching. You know, everything is online. So you start to think, cikgu ni dia buat gamifikasi semua online. Dia buat dia semua online. Saya tak dapat buat apa-apa. Masuk Google Meet tak ada orang nak masuk. Contoh, because you have the ideation of gamification being tech based because of the situation that we are in now. But the best way to use gamification is actually hybrid, where you get mix both technology and the physical thing. That's the best environment to use. So next time when we're back to school, when you're back to classes, you can use gamification by using or whatever tools you have. Now, back to the question whether you can develop, you can. Skill set, in any skill you can develop. I learned from zero as well, right? I have never learned programming, but I learned programming as well. I have never learned this too. I also learn it as well. All this takes your own self-determination, whether you want to learn or not. I always tell this to teachers. If you keep pushing students to be self-determined, you should show them that you are also self-determined. So if you don't know how to use one tool, make sure you are really, really good in that tool and use it. You don't have to master a lot of tools. Be good in one, make use of it for different purposes. And last question, what is the critical difference between gamification and game-based learning? It's just the game part, meaning to say gamification is using the game mechanics, game elements. You don't use the game like the real existing game. If you use existing game like Monopoly, all the existing tools that you have, that's game-based learning because you just use it to address the immediate learning needs. But if you just use the element, you're not using the game, you use, like, for example, one of the famous game mechanics would be challenge. You give them challenges and then you pose a series of solution to that kind of challenge. That's already gamification, but you're not using any game. You're using game concept or game element for your teaching and learning of a content. If you use game to come in, right? If you develop a game, then that's game-based learning. There's a gray area between game-based learning and gamification because that game part can be very simple game to a very complex game. So the complicated game usually will end up towards the end where you call it a serious game, where it's very serious. Like in medical field, there are a lot of games in medical field teaching all these doctors how to operate and all that because it's risk-free, right? You can try over and over again without killing people because game environment give you that kind of trial and error. Okay, that's all from me.
Thank you, Chakiman. I think we have one last question that is open to all. Question is, bagaimana pula pelaksanaan STEM dalam subjek TVET? Saya bukakan kepada speaker-speaker kita hari ini ya. Siapa boleh menjawab? Soalan cukup emas.
I can get the ball rolling lah.
Yeah.
To me, TVET is part of STEM, to be honest, because in TVET you have engineering, you also have the technical skills, you have the science of it and all that, so it's already part of STEM. So, I mean, I think our obsession of using acronym to divide ourselves into different mazhab or cohort should stop. I mean, whether you're in TVET ke, IPG ke, university ke, colleges ke, school ke, we are all for the aim of educating our learners to be good learners, to be getting the input. Don't care whether you're in TVET ke apa, because I have this I always get this argument where, saya ni di Poly, saya TVET, saya tak buat benda ni. Saya ni STEM, saya tak buat benda ni. Saya ni university. You shouldn't do that anymore. We all are educators. Our whole purpose is still to educate our nation. If we are still in this mindset of categorizing ourselves into all these kind of branches, we can't go far. And then you can see how our education is suffering because of this kind of categorization. I say focus on ourselves. We should be, like, I am from university, but I also engage Polytechnic. I have a lot of Polytechnic elite lecturers and even students. I have IPG as well. I have schools as well. So the more we are open to this kind of sharing, the more we are open to this kind of interaction, we will be a better educator because we see what went wrong in school. We see what went wrong in our, even in universities, and we try to merge or try to see the gap that we can address. So TVET ke STEM, you can still use whatever you have learned in this session on how we apply STEM education across levels of education. Like gamification, you can use from kindergarten up until, andragogy, all this professional certificate, whatever. People are using gamification. That's from me. Yeah, maybe the other speakers can add in.
Any speakers to add in?
So I completely agree with what Mr. Chakiman mentioned, and to add on to that, basically even for TVET, I think we need to come back to the point of seeing how we can develop their practical skills as well. I think to be able to do things practically, it comes from your creativity to innovate and then to make it happen. So I think this is the thing that I mentioned just now that we are seeing lacking in the younger generation right now is on the skills to make things work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Leonard. Okay, if no one wants to add, I think we have to proceed. We've got one question who asks about sharing speaker slide. All of these will be on YouTube, and then all listeners, all teachers, you can watch the YouTube. I think the slides are there. In terms of the PDF copy of the slides or the PPT copy of the slides, I would have to personally ask the speakers. And if the speakers is willing to share, we will upload it into the website. I think this is more of privacy sort of for the speakers, all right? So I'm gonna share one last slide, I think, which is this end slide.